many of us know that God is the joy and the strength of our lives? He removes all pain, misery, and strife. He promised to keep us, never to leave us. He will never, ever. How many of us are glad that God never falls short of his word? But what are we gonna do? Say, I've got to fast and pray. I gotta stay in the narrow way, God, even though life happens. I'll keep my life clean every day because I want to go with him. Can I see the hands of those that want to go with him? Because I've come too far. Say, I've been through too much stuff not to make it. Amen. So worship with us as we sing, God is. God is the joy and the strength of my life. He removes all pain, misery, and strife. He promised to keep me, never to leave me. He'll never ever fall short of his word. I've got to fast and pray, stay in this narrow way. I keep my life clean every day. I want to go with him when he comes back. I've come too far and I'll never turn back. God is the joy. God is the joy and the strength of my life. He removes all pain, misery, and strife. He promised to keep me, never to leave me. He'll never ever fall short of his word. I've got to fast and pray, stay in this narrow way. I keep my life clean every day. I want to go with him when he comes back. Say, I've come too far. I've come too far, and I'll never turn back. Say, God is. Sing that one more time. Say, God is the joy. God is the joy and the strength of my life. He removes all pain, misery, and strife. He promised to keep me, never to leave me. He'll never ever fall short of his word. I've got to fast and pray, stay in this narrow way. I'll keep my life clean every day. I want to go with him when he comes back. Said I've come too far. Somebody declare, say I won't turn back. Say God is. God is You are my strength, strength like no other. Come on, can I get you to sing that with me? Strength like no other. Say, aren't you glad that it reaches? Come on, I can't hear you. Somebody was low and God's strength reached. My strength, strength like no other. Strength like no other. Say, God, it reaches to me. Come on, let's put it together. Say, you are my strength. You are my strength. Come on, declare it. Say, strength like no other. Like no other. Say, God's strength like no other. Say, I'm so glad it reaches me. Say, you are my peace. You are my peace. Anybody been through a storm before? And God's peace like no other. Peace like no other. Reaches to me. Say, amazing grace. Amazing grace. Grace like no other. Grace like no other. Say, God, it reaches to me. Somebody love. In the fullness of God. In the power of His name. In the power of God. Say, lift me up. Lift me up. I was so low, but you lifted me up. You lift me up. In the fullness of God. There is healing in His name. In the power of God. Say, I can lift my head. Lift me up. Say, thank you for lifting me, Jesus. You lift me up. Say, in the fullness of God. In the power of His name. In the power of God. Say, you lift me up. You lift me up. Anybody been low before? Say, I was so low. You lift me up. Say, in the fullness. In the power of His name. Say, lift me up. Say, God, you lift me up. Say, unfailing love, unfailing love. Say, stronger than mountains. Say, His love is deeper than ocean. Say, I'm glad it reaches to me. Can I get you to sing that with me? Say, unfailing love. Unfailing love. Say, stronger than mountains. Stronger than mountains. Say, deeper than ocean. Deeper than ocean. Say, it reaches to me. Reaches to me. Come on, say, in the fullness. In the fullness of your grace. Say, in the power of His name. In the power of your grace. Say, you lift me up. Lift me up. Say, God, you lift me up. You lift me up. Say, in the fullness of your grace. In the power of your grace. You lift me up. You lift me up. I want you to understand something. There are people in here that are dealing with depression. There are people who are having suicidal thoughts. We come to church Sabbath after Sabbath after Sabbath. We dress nice, we look good. But if it wasn't for the mercy and the grace of God, where would I be? It was your love. It was your blood that kept me, Jesus. Anybody want to testify and say, God, in the fullness of your grace, in the power of your name, at the mention of his name, demons gotta flee. My depression is gone. Suicidal thoughts are gone. Can we sing that? Say, in the fullness of his grace. In the fullness of your grace. In the power of God's name. In the power of your grace. Say, you lift me up. Say, thank you for lifting me, Jesus. You lift me up. Say, in the fullness. In the fullness of your grace. There is healing in his name. In the power of your grace. I can lift my head. So you are my strength. You are my strength. Say strength like no other. Like no other. Say strength like no other. Listen, part, touch yourself and say it reaches to me. Say reaches to me. Reaches to me. Say, God, I'm grateful. Reaches to me. Reaches to me. Say on my bad days, it reaches. Reaches to me. On my good days, God, I thank you because it reaches. When my marriage isn't going well, God, it reaches. When the doctors say no, God, it reaches. When the church got too much politics, it still reaches. Say it reaches to me. Say, God, it reaches. Say, God, I'm glad it reaches. One last time, it reaches. Say, it reaches. Say, God, I'm grateful. I stand in awe of you, Jesus. That Jesus shed for me. When
Children of God, God bless you on this Wellness Wednesday evening. Welcome once again on the Shiloh platform for a special worship encounter tonight where we considered the global threat. I'm your host, Pastor Dr. Marvin Charlet. On behalf of the elders, the officers, our entire church membership, we are so happy and encouraged that you have joined us tonight. Those on YouTube, on Facebook, we love you. We are Shiloh strong, Shiloh spiritual, and tonight we are in for a blessing. Let's bow our head right now for a word of prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, we bless your name. We honor your name because you have been good to us. And because you have been good to us, you have encouraged our hearts to look to you within this global threat. We're seeing health threats. We're seeing the tornado threat. We're seeing all kinds of threats, reminding us that Christ is soon to come. Grant us your faith, your peace, and your hope as we look to you, for soon you shall come. We thank you tonight for the worldwide ministry of Dr. Wilmore Webley. He continues to be a drum major when it comes to peer review, pure science, Bible-based education, informing all people that God is truth and God is the light. Tonight, as he presents, I pray for a fresh anointing on him as he gives us the information. We pray in Christ's name, amen. Tonight, we are happy to have in our midst the world-renowned microbiologist from the University of Massachusetts, Dr. Wilmore Webley. Dr. Webley is an expert in his field at the University of Massachusetts. Dr. Webley is a world-renowned author, has written numerous books, and peer reviews over thousands of peer reviews in the area of health, chlamydia, and all kinds of good stuff, as well as AIDS. We're happy that he's joined us back this evening. Dr. Webley serves as the Associate Dean for Inclusion Engagement in the Graduate School at the University of Massachusetts. It's good to have a brother representing us who loves the Lord, who's got the brain, and who's committed. With no further delay, we welcome a friend of Shiloh, Dr. Wilmore Webley. Dr. Webley, we welcome you tonight.
Dr. Charlet, it is good to be with you, sir. It is always good to be with Shiloh, Brooklyn. You have been very generous to me in your introductions. I thank you for your prayers and for the blessings of God. I pray that God has been good to you and your congregation, sir. Today, I'm here to give just a little bit of an update as to where we are and hopefully be able to answer some of your questions at the end. Again, it's a pleasure. I think that this church is very lucky to be able to hold on to a man of God, loves the people, who has compassion and wisdom and vision to lead in such a time as this. And we thank you for your ministry. I will share my screen with you at this time. Let me pop this up and I will, hopefully you're seeing my screen there.
Perfect.
Good. All right. So, you know, we're at an interesting place. We've been talking now for quite a while. You and I, as a church, as a body, as a family, we've watched this pandemic climb. We've watched it drop. We've watched it look like it's going to go away. Then we've watched it come back. And there are multiple reasons for that. But, you know, this evening I want to take you through a little bit of a reminder of what it is that we're dealing with this pandemic, with this virus, and what are some of the implications of what we're actually seeing right now. So I'll just play this for you a little bit. Give it a minute here to come up.
We've seen countless depictions of it, the mysterious novel coronavirus that has started a global pandemic. It invades our body on so small a scale that it's invisible to the human eye. But even though we can't see it, what we do know about viruses can provide a way to defeat it. Humans have an interesting relationship with viruses. We often think of viruses as foreign invaders, but viruses are longtime residents of our body, on our skin, in our intestines, and other organs. Many of these viruses, known as phages, even protect us from harmful bacteria. Viruses are so enmeshed with human DNA that at least 8% of our genes come from ancient viruses. But it's ambiguous whether viruses are even alive. They can't reproduce on their own, so they hijack our cellular equipment to make copies of themselves. A coronavirus does this through its corona, or crown of protein spikes. The virus uses the shape of these proteins to gain entry into the cell, like a key in a lock. And like any clever thief, it disguises itself by changing the physical appearance of the protein and masking it with a coat of sugars to trick our immune system. When the entrance is unlocked, the virus is free to deposit its genetic material and set up shop, replicating itself. How do we know the novel coronavirus does this? Well, years of experience with SARS, MERS, and other coronavirus-related diseases have given us a head start. Severe acute respiratory syndrome, or SARS, is a coronavirus disease that started in China in late 2002. Similar to COVID-19, SARS infects the respiratory system, especially the lungs, where the disease is most lethal. COVID-19 shares almost 80% of its genes with SARS, which is why this novel coronavirus disease is officially known as SARS-CoV-2. 10 years after the outbreak of SARS, another lethal coronavirus disease spread through the Arabian Peninsula. MERS, or Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, proved to be just as deadly, so much so that transmission of both diseases burned out after several months of containment. COVID-19, SARS, and MERS are all zoonotic, meaning the virus originated in animals before it came to humans. And when the novel coronavirus took that jump, it targeted the same entry points that the SARS coronavirus had, proteins called angiotensin-converting enzyme 2, or ACE2 for short. These enzymes are found on cells in our throat, nose, kidneys, and lungs. Normally, they help regulate blood pressure for the body. Coronaviruses turn them into a back door. The spread of the coronavirus between the upper respiratory area, where the virus is most transmissible, and the lungs, where it is most dangerous, may be why COVID-19 is potentially more contagious than MERS and SARS, and also deadlier than the flu. Research has shown COVID-19 to be at least 10 times more likely to bind to ACE2 receptors than SARS. The tighter the connection, the easier it is for the virus to break into a cell and replicate before moving on to its next host. Virus copying doesn't always go as planned, and coding mistakes make for mutations, some that end up destroying the virus. Luckily for us, this coronavirus is not mutating quickly, which means that any treatment developed will be more effective for longer. We're still in the dark on many aspects of how COVID-19 operates. Sure, it's a microscopic war with an unknown enemy, but at least the territory is not completely uncharted.
So I really like this little overview from the Washington Post that was done a couple of months ago. But here's where we are right now. We've reached over 800,000 deaths in the United States overall. We have over 272 million cases of this virus and over 5.3 million deaths. So this thing is not going anywhere fast, which is why we're here. Kristen Anderson, a respected immunologist at Scripps, someone I know very well, he says, I see nothing that suggests that this virus is quieting down. He says, I don't think this virus is as transmissible as it can be. Overall, what he's saying is, we would be fools to think that this pandemic is really over. And as we look at the death toll, one of the things I keep reminding people is that we don't have an accurate count of people who have died to coronavirus, but when they've looked at the excess death, the global excess death, it runs 3 to 4 times the deaths that we're seeing globally for SARS-CoV-2. When we look at countries, especially rich countries, almost every one of them have seen their life expectancy slashed after the pandemic. You can see most of these larger countries, including the United States, have had the life expectancy go down for both males and females. The only place that we've seen life expectancy stay up there is in Denmark, a little bit in parts of the Netherlands. I've been saying to people that when you think about a pandemic, when you think about just mortality, you miss a significant part of what this microbe is doing. There's another part called morbidity. And morbidity is that you don't die from the disease, but you're left with several symptoms and sequelae or issues associated with being infected with it. In other words, surviving the virus doesn't necessarily mean that you continue your life as it was. And so one of the things that they've seen now that this virus is doing is leading to what is called a syncytia formation. A number of viruses do this, but HIV is especially great at doing this, where it literally packs your cells together. It causes cells to clump together. And what you're seeing here in blue are the nuclei of cells. So you can see how many cells have gotten together here to form one giant cell by counting the number of nuclei that you have here. You can see that you're having this syncytia formation, these fused cells. And so the question is, why would a virus do this? Why would it take your cells that it hasn't infected, probably only infected one of them, but then use that one that it has infected and suck the others together, essentially inactivating them? And so what this does at forming a syncytia with this one infected cell actually allows the virus to thrive for a longer period of time. It gives it a larger surface area to make more of itself and to put out more. And it seems as if it's causing not just your regular cells to fuse, but actually immune cells, your lymphocytes, cells in your immune response that could help you to get rid of it. And so this is actually a part of immune evasion. This is a way for the virus to actually evade the immune system. What else do we know about this virus when it infects you? Well, some people who get infected with this virus, they lose sense of smell, sense of taste. People start having cognitive issues. And for a while, scientists didn't know what was going on here. But in some recent articles, it's becoming clearer. And one of the things that really jumped out at me in these publications is the fact that COVID-19 is able to kill blood vessels in the brain. And when you look at people who are infected, what you see is that you can see remnants of blood vessels that used to be there that are no longer there because the virus has destroyed them, essentially. And destroying blood vessels in the brain is no simple thing. Destroying blood vessels probably in other organs too. And this could actually lead to some of the type of dementia that we're seeing in people with COVID-19 and who have recovered from the disease. So the scientists reported that there were more dead capillaries in the brain of people who had died from COVID-19 than from other causes. And so what they're seeing when they're looking at these post-mortem brains is that they're seeing this. The other thing that people started having was hearing loss and ringing in the air. People started having dizziness and ringing in the air. And initially they couldn't understand what was going on. New research again is showing that this virus is able to bind to cells in the inner ear and infect them. And what you're seeing here in this picture, you're seeing the receptor that the virus is able to bind to, and you're seeing a co-receptor. And then you're seeing now the nuclear protein of the virus. So that's what it's saying is the virus has infected these. The more virus you put in, the more infection you're seeing. So essentially what it's saying is that in lots of places in the body that we never typically have an infection of the lung straying to, we're seeing this infection going there. And I just pulled up this report. It has been out there, but people haven't really looked at it, where it has shown that for people who survive COVID-19, they're at an increased risk of serious illness and death 6 to 8 months out after recovering from COVID-19. And so that's what you're seeing here, that, you know, the University of Washington School of Medicine in St. Louis did this really remarkable study where they showed that even people with mild COVID cases had an increased risk of death within 6 months, 8 months after they recovered from the disease. And so this study is actually cataloging some of the issues related to being infected with COVID-19, everything from mental health issues, the nervous system issues, of course, respiratory issues, shortness of breath, low blood oxygen levels, but cardiovascular issues. People are having acute coronary disease. They're having heart failure, arrhythmias, palpitations as a result. There are people having hair loss. People have committed suicide because they have such great ringing in the ear from COVID-19. So again, what I'm trying to bring out to you here is that it is not simply a disease that you get infected with and you recover. There are a lot of people who have recovered and have significant issues after recovering. And then, of course, you have this new report coming out that shows that COVID-19 is able to impair men's sexual health and performance. This research showed that they found that men who hadn't previously had these issues develop pretty severe erectile dysfunction after COVID-19 infection. Men may be 6 times more likely to develop brief or long-term erectile dysfunction after contracting the virus, according to this research. And it shows that about 18% of men reported sexual dysfunction, and some 13% experienced pain, testicular pain, 8% other organ issues, and about 4% of men had a decrease in the size of the penis and the testicles. So again, we are fearful of a lot of things, but this is what this research is showing. And so many people who now live, this research concluded in a National Geographic expose on COVID, saying that many people now live in this purgatorial netherworld, they call it, of long haul or long COVID, that experts are calling our next national health disaster. Why? Because we really don't know what to expect with long COVID. How long is it? What's the extent of it? And according to an article in the New England Journal of Medicine, 10 to 30% of those who are infected with the virus, at least 42 million in the United States alone, and 229 million worldwide experience ongoing debilitating effects from COVID. The other issue that we're seeing, pregnant women who get infected with COVID at a 70% increased risk of death, premature birth. So this is a significant disease, and it affects, of course, people of color more than the regular population. So what has been the impact of this disease? What they've shown is that because of the vaccines that are out there, and because of the job that the vaccines have done, it has averted over 1.8 million deaths have been averted. Over 10.3 million hospitalizations have been averted. And over 35.9 million, nearly 36 million COVID infections have been averted because of vaccination. Simple study, they had this camp, more than 7,000 people attended overnight youth camps that use multiple COVID prevention strategies, masking, testing, isolating. And what they've showed is that 93% of those people were vaccinated. And look at the outcome. 9 people tested positive for COVID-19 and no in-camp spread happened because precautions were taken. In other words, if we're able to mask, distance, isolate people when they're infected because we're testing, have people operating cohorts, washing their hands, we are able to avert COVID-19 and not have some of these sequelae that we're having. But compounding all of this is that every couple of months or so, you're looking and you're seeing another variant. Now, all of them are variants of concern. Some of them are just variants of interest. But so far, we've had Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta, and Omicron be variants of concern because they could cause more significant issues. We've had Epsilon and Zeta and Eta and Theta and Iota, Kappa, Lambda, and Mu as variants of interest. They didn't lead to any big outbreaks. You might ask, how did we get from Mu to Omicron, the 15th letter of the Greek alphabet? Because they skipped Nu, because it sounds too close to an English word new, N-E-W, and they skipped Z because they're people who has this as a name. So that's how we got to where we are now. Z is a common surname, and they didn't want new to confound the issue. So here we are with these variants popping up all over the place. Two significant variants have now come out of South Africa. The Beta variant and now the Omicron variant. These are variants of concern. And the Beta variant is still a significant variant, but it didn't spread well beyond South Africa and cause problems here in our part of the hemisphere. But it is very much evasive of vaccines, more than any other variant we had up until now. So now we have this Omicron variant. And essentially, as the video explained at the onset, we get these variants because the virus is replicating. As long as there are people who this virus can infect, it will always be replicating. And every time it makes a new batch of viruses, in other words, it infects us, it multiplies in our system. Every time it does that, there's the probability that it will make a new variant. The new variants can be something that's worse, or many times, more often than not, they're not that great of variants, and so they die out. They're outcompeted by others. But of significance is the fact that you have these spike proteins, and it is the spike protein, as I've explained multiple times, that bind to this ACE2 receptor on our cells, on our human cells, and allow the virus to get in. All of the vaccines out there have been made against this spike protein. And so essentially what you have are three major concerns when you have variants pop up. Concern number one, is it more transmissible? Concern number two, does it cause a more severe illness? And concern number three, now that we have vaccines, does it affect the vaccine efficacy? So what we've seen so far is that essentially, if you have any major change in the spike protein, in that part that binds to our cells to get in, that could affect transmissibility. That could actually make the virus more likely to be transmitted. The Alpha and Beta variants appear to spread more readily. The Delta variant was 43 to 90% more transmissible than the original variant of the virus. So transmissibility is something that we've seen increase with these variants. Severity of illness, studies have shown that, the Alpha variant could have been linked to a small increase in death rate, but that didn't really play out. What we've seen now is that there's studies that have confirmed that a person infected with Delta variant is more likely to be hospitalized than someone with Alpha. So there is an increased severity there with the Delta variant in terms of illness. And then where vaccine efficacy is concerned, we know that Delta is moderately resistant to some of the vaccines, although if you get boosted, you still do a really good job at protecting yourself from hospitalization and death. With the Omicron variant, this B11529 variant that just popped up in South Africa, it's a newly detected one. What they're seeing is that the detection of it coincides with a sharp increase in cases, not just in South Africa, but we're seeing it now in parts of Europe. We're seeing it in the UK. We're seeing it in Denmark. I'll show you a couple graphs soon. At this point, it's not clear if it causes more severe illness. In fact, all of the preliminary data suggests that it doesn't cause more severe illness. Doesn't mean that it's not a significant virus. It can still lead to death, as we've seen in the UK just this week. The question now is how evasive it might be against the current vaccines that we have. And the problem is that this virus actually harbors a lot of mutations, a lot of changes in the spike protein that it uses to bind. And the antibodies that are made again for these vaccines, when you inject these vaccines, the antibodies that are made, these protective proteins, are designed to bind to that very spike protein. And if you change that spike protein, some of these antibodies might not bind overall. So right now we're looking at a virus that's more transmissible, but might also be evasive of the vaccines. And here's what Dr. Walensky, the CDC director, had to say today.
At least 36 states and over 75 countries have reported confirmed cases caused by the Omicron variant. And yesterday, CDC released data that estimate the prevalence of the Omicron variant based on our national genomic sequencing analysis. Although the vast majority of cases continue to be Delta, representing about 96% of cases across the country, the Omicron variant is now estimated to represent about 3% of the cases in the United States. In some areas of the country, the estimates of Omicron are even higher, including in New York and New Jersey, where CDC projects that Omicron could represent about 13% of all cases. In looking at early data on transmissibility of Omicron from other countries, we expect to see the proportion of Omicron cases here in the United States continue to grow in the coming weeks. Early data suggests that Omicron is more transmissible than Delta, with a doubling time of about 2 days.
Our booster vaccine regimens work against Omicron. At this point, there is no need for a variant-specific booster. And so the message remains clear. If you are unvaccinated, get vaccinated, and particularly in the arena of Omicron, if you are fully vaccinated, get your booster shot.
So essentially, what you're hearing here from these health officials is that, and the data has shown this, that if you have 2 doses of either the Pfizer or Moderna vaccines, your probability of preventing infection by Omicron is probably right around 30-something, at most 40%. If you get boosted, it brings it all the way back up to 90-something% protection against getting infected. We don't yet know it's true, the true ability of these vaccines to prevent significant illness, hospitalization, and death. That's something that we're going to have to look at. As you know, hospitalization and death lags behind. But what I'm showing you here are, the multiple mutations that this variant has. It has over 50 mutations in total. In other words, 50 letter changes all over it. 32 of those are right in the spike protein where the vaccines are made against, and that it uses to get into your cell. The fact that it still is able to get into the cells efficiently means that it has changed some of these little codes that it has. And there are 15 mutations in just the area that it binds directly with. You're having mutations all over it. But essentially what we're seeing here is that you're having a significant increase in numbers and the percent of cases in selected countries here. South Africa, as you can see, almost all of the new cases that they're getting now is Omicron. We're seeing similar numbers coming up in England and Scotland and Denmark and Belgium. And it's just spreading across. And as Dr. Walensky said, about 3% of cases in the US now, particularly in New York and New Jersey, you have about 13%. And in Norway, health authorities are warning that if no countermeasures were taken, Omicron would infect anywhere from 90 to 300,000 people a day. That is a tremendous number. Of course, they're going to have mitigation there. But I want you to see something. In Denmark, for example, just about 70 something, nearly 80% of people are vaccinated. And that compares to the US where, you know, we're right around about 60, 61% of people vaccinated, right? And look at what is going on in Denmark in terms of numbers of cases. Now, the caveat here is that Denmark is way better at testing than the US is. I mean, it is far and above better at testing people than we do in the United States. So their numbers are way more accurate in terms of the number of cases that they're having. But as you can see, the moment Omicron came in, look at the sharp increase here. This is going right up for them. Hospitalizations have not yet been increasing significantly in Denmark. So Denmark is a place that everybody is watching. So here is the thought now, that Denmark has about 77, 78% of their population fully vaccinated, 23% boosted, right? And so look at what is happening with them where Omicron is concerned. The US is 61% vaccinated, 15% boosted. We're currently having about 120,000 cases per day with about greater than 66,000 hospitalizations because of the Delta variant. The question is, what happens to us come middle of January if we start having a significant increase in the Omicron variant? That is yet to be seen. And you see the doubling rate here. You know, you're looking from day to day, you're seeing the doubling rate here is every 2 days, essentially, in Denmark. Some good news, there are a couple of antiviral pills out there that if you take them within a certain period, once they get approved, these are being looked at by the FDA, looking to approve. Merck has this pill called Molnupiravir that you take 4 pills twice a day for 5 days. Within that 5 days, showing they had symptoms drop. One of the concerns with this pill is that based on the way it works, it could allow for mutations to happen in this virus. So that's something they're looking at. Better news, Pfizer has this remarkable drug that it has created, Paxlovid. And for people who are in the sciences, who are interested in drug development, this is a masterpiece of drug development. This drug was originally developed for the original SARS in 2003. But because the pandemic went away, they kind of just shelved it, weren't able to fully test it. They took it off the shelf when COVID-19 came around, tested it. It wasn't very effective, wasn't taking up very effectively. They went ahead, modified it, you know, chemically modified the side chains until they now have an efficacy of about 89%. If you get this drug within 3 days of symptoms, it can reduce your risk of hospitalization and death by almost 90%. And if you take it within 5 days of symptom onset, about 88%. This is a very, very effective drug. It's a 10-fold decrease in viral load if you take it at day 5, when you take it and you look at day 5. In other words, it's significantly taking out the virus. Of course, it's combined with another anti-HIV drug, which is a protease inhibitor, because this drug is actually working against the protease of this virus. And so when they've tested it on Omicron, they see that it actually works against it. So that is good news. Again, with all of this, my advice is don't panic. The same protocols that you've been following, wearing a mask when you're in crowded areas, when you're indoors, wear a mask, wash your hands, be thoughtful about where you're going. It doesn't make sense at this stage to go and wear a mask in a restaurant that is crowded and then go take off your mask and eat. In my opinion, that's just not the type of thing that you want to frequently do right now. You want to avoid crowded areas. You want to observe those hygiene. And if you can increase ventilation in the space that you are, that works very, very well. If you have symptoms or if you're infected, quarantine, get tested. You know, there are multiple places now where you can get tested. Get even one of those quick antigen tests. to see if you are infected. Get vaccinated if you can. These pills are not yet approved by the FDA, so that it's yet to be seen. They are no substitute for getting vaccines. All the data so far has shown that these vaccines have been extremely effective in preventing hospitalization and death. All of the fears that people had about these vaccines, none of them have come true. These vaccines have worked very, very well the way we expected them to. But at this stage, I don't expect this pandemic to go away anytime soon. There's just way too many vulnerable people. A variant like Omicron clearly developed in somebody who was immunocompromised, probably somebody who had cancer or some other autoimmune disease, because it was allowed to develop these multiple mutations without much pushback from an immune system that would be robust. So somebody who had a strong immune system, even if you weren't vaccinated, somebody who was healthy and strong, this type of variant would not have easily developed in a person like that. And I'll stop there at this point.
Thank you very much, Dr. Webley, for really setting the pace for our discussion for this evening here. Dr. Webley, you are really helping us to navigate ourselves through all of this. But I must say tonight, there are some real fears, and there are a lot of questions out there, and we need to be respectful of one another. There are people who feel that because the science has not been so quantified with these boosters and the vaccination, why take that risk? That's a question I hear all the time. That's a real fear with these vaccination and also with the boosters. There seem to be experimenting. What are your thoughts on that, Dr. Webley?
I would say the experimentation for these vaccines ended a year ago. Nobody is experimenting with these vaccines. These are real therapeutics that have been tested and tried and proven to be extremely effective and safe. I think what we're suffering from, Doc, is wrestling with all the misinformation out there. The truth is, I've had a lot of thoughts about this over the past few months, and I've asked myself repeatedly, if I didn't have the background that I do, if I hadn't been studying immunology and infectious diseases for 30 years, if I didn't read widely and take time to understand what is going on, if I didn't cut through all the myths and the noise, would I be one of those people sitting on the sidelines still saying, I don't know if these vaccines are safe and I don't want to put this in my body. We need more data. I probably would be one of those people, because the misinformation campaign has been so well structured. It has been allowed to be so pervasive, and it has played on people's fears. You know, we're all fearful of things that we don't fully understand.
Okay.
And I think what has happened is that the people who, for whatever reason, don't want people to take the vaccines have just played on those fears. And that's what I've seen. But to say that these vaccines are untested, to say that there's a lot that we don't know about them, we've always had vaccines. Vaccines are things that we've been taking since 1796. Vaccines have been a routine part of human existence. Boosters have always been there, because people realize that after you take one shot of the vaccine, it hasn't worked well. So we take another shot and we take another shot. Look at something like hepatitis B that you start getting from your babies born in the hospital. They get hepatitis B and they get boosted 3 or 4 times after that, so that they have the full protection. Now, here's the thing with these boosters and why the boosters for COVID-19 vaccines have been necessary. Because under normal circumstances, outside of the threat of a pandemic like this one, You would never have given 2 doses of a vaccine that close, right? 3 weeks after, or just a month after you get the first one, you get the second one. And the reason for that is that immunologically, your cells, the cells that actually make these antibodies, have not yet matured, right? There's what is called affinity maturation. And affinity maturation is that your body, as it makes these Y-shaped proteins, become better at fitting these proteins to the virus, to whatever the antigen or the foreign substance is. It fits tighter and tighter. And the better the fit, the better you're able to clear it. It takes more than 4 weeks for that to happen. In fact, optimally, 6 to 8 weeks is where you would want to go. So now that these boosters have been are being meted out 6 months after you've gotten your last dose, it now is acting on cells in your body that have been conditioned to bind more tightly to the virus, to be more specific to the virus, because your immune system has matured to that level now. So I would be very surprised, Pastor, if we would need another booster after the one that we have now. Because it's not just the amount of antibodies that you have now, but you have a better quality of antibodies that have been induced by the booster at this time.
Dr. Webley, this is great. What is the name of the first pill in your slide? Would you please send that to us?
Yeah, that's molnupiravir. That is the one from Merck. And so Merck has been working on this. I'll put it in the chat.
And that's the one by Merck here. So
right.
The person just takes that pill, and that pill is supposed to.
Yeah, you take multiple of those pills. The idea is that this is an antiviral, right? And that it is supposed to help to control the virus so that you lower the viral load and give your immune system a chance to catch up. However, the interesting thing about these pills, both of these, is that you have to be very quick about it.
Okay.
If you allow more than 4 or 5 days to pass, they won't be very effective. You would have so many viral particles in your system already that it'll be very hard for these pills to work effectively in preventing you from ending up in the hospital. So essentially, this has to be combined now with a really good testing system. And it's one of those things that you haven't heard a lot about, but testing needs to be made available so that if you start having symptoms, you're like, okay, this could be the cold or it could be COVID. I don't know, but I'm getting tested today. You have to be able to get those results back as soon as possible. Getting those results back 3 days later doesn't help you. You need those results back within 24 hours, so that you now can see, okay, I'm infected. And you could either go to a pharmacist or to the nearest clinic or hospital where they'd be able to dispense these medications and you get them. The truth is they're not yet FDA approved, none of them. Mm-hmm. And even if they were, they don't have a lot of them in the pipeline at this point.
Okay.
So the amount, for example, for the Pfizer pill, the amount that they're able to produce would probably be a week's worth in the United States at this point in time. They need to up the production of them once they get approved to be able to make it widely available so that people could get this in the way we need to have it.
Okay. Dr. Webley, foundational to Adventist health practice is a 3-stool paradigm. The Bible being the basis, the writings of Mrs. White, and peer review science. The church does not mandate people to be vaccinated. The church encourages people to be vaccinated. The church encourages responsible vaccination. Now, the church encourages the people's conscience, their choice. There's a lot of conversation going on within the church, outside the church about, hey, this thing about you're mandating me, you're taking away my choice. It's my body. I can do what I want with my body. It's my prerogative. How do we help people to understand, look at the Bible, look at the spirit of prophecy, but look at the peer science and getting the right articles? How do we help people to be able to come to a sound decision to navigate, to be vaccinated or not? Is their choice?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Doc. Here is my take on it. You can't make a correct decision about anything until you have all the information.
Mm-hmm.
So having the right information is important. So I'm not going to initially jump to, okay, I've decided not to get the vaccine, because deciding not to get the vaccine has to come from a place of being informed. And my fear is a lot of people are not well informed. People are making this decision out of fear and misinformation rather from a place of true information. Now, if you truly understand how these vaccines are made, the safety of these vaccines and all the other science surrounding it, and you still make the decision not to be vaccinated, absolutely, that is your choice. But you have to understand that with choice comes responsibility. We are not just responsible for ourselves. We're responsible for our neighbors. I am my brother's keeper. So how do you go about being responsible while having freedom of choice? You see, no freedom comes without responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are going to make the decision not to get vaccinated, yes, that is your choice, but you also have to understand that there are consequences to choices. So you can make the decision that you don't want to get vaccinated. And if I'm your employer, I could make the decision that I'm no longer going to hire you because I want people who are vaccinated. That's also a choice, right? That is a choice by an employer. And so people have to realize that you can't have your cake and eat it too.
Mm-hmm.
You can make the choice not to get vaccinated, but you can't also say, hey, by the way, you can't prevent me from keeping my job that I have, because other people also have their choice. So choice can be a two-edged sword in that respect. I don't believe in absolute mandates. I don't believe that governments should be able to mandate what I take as a medication.
Mm-hmm.
However, I also realize that sometimes governments have to make tough choices for the good of the whole municipality, the whole community, the whole country. And they have to weigh that versus my personal choice. So when seatbelts came out, lots of people didn't want to wear seatbelts. They're like, it's my choice whether or not I wear a seatbelt. It is my choice whether or not I do this or do that. But the government said, listen, I'm mandating you to wear a seatbelt. If you don't wear a seatbelt, I'm going to give you a ticket. And it was a huge deal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people were taking pictures of themselves not wearing a seatbelt, preferring to get arrested. Now we go in our cars and we click without even thinking about it. Things sometimes look worse than they are at the moment when people are in the heat of the moment, when people feel like their rights are being trampled upon. But in the end, we know that seatbelt saves lives. It's the same thing with these vaccines. These vaccines save lives. They have saved, I showed you that graph, that table. They have saved over 1 million lives. If people weren't vaccinated, they would have died from this virus in this country. So people have to really look at this and be objective and utilize the information out there. In terms of looking at peer-reviewed information, unfortunately, the scientific community has made this difficult because the way we publish data, you know, I was talking with my students about this just a couple of weeks ago. The way we publish our data, we publish in a way that only scientists can read it.
Okay.
You know, that needs to change. We need to be able to write up our scientific articles in a way that the general public can benefit from that data set. The way it is written, the jargons that are used in it are not conducive to the layperson reading that and getting the same information from it.
So in other words, Doc, it's too academic. It needs to be more layman approach oriented.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that is a huge issue with science today. Science communication needs to be more accessible. And I think it's one of the things that have come right to the forefront in this pandemic, that a lot of people can go in, people pick up misinformation because somebody goes to a paper that is published and they wave the title of it and say, hey, in this paper, it said this, but the paper never said that.
Now, Dr. Webley, there's a lot of sensationalism and fanaticism out there. And there are those who believes that the vaccine is the mark of the beast. There are those who argue about the vaccine is actually more food oriented because you may have certain particles of certain animals there. They make it more of a food argument. Hey, you know, I'm taking a piece of lobster and the vaccination. There's a lot of fanaticism there, a lot of sensationalism there, but we do understand the fear of our members, and we want to be able to respect where they are, but to help them to navigate. So how do we work through all this fanaticism and this sensationalism? You know, it's the mark of the beast. Hey, this has this piece of pork in it, a piece of lobster in it. You know, how do we help members to weigh that out?
Yeah, I think the first step is always education. You know, there was a time when I always wondered, why is it that God came down every day in the midst of the garden to talk with Adam and Eve? What was that about? And as I read the book Education, it became clear that Eden was a classroom where Adam and Eve were being taught what is truth, what is important, to understand the world around them. If people are open to learning, we can learn about this stuff. Somebody said to me last week, you know, any presentation that you're making now on COVID, trying to convince somebody is a lost cause. And I said to the person, I don't believe that for 1 second. Because the day I start believing that is the last day I make one of these presentations, Pastor. Mm-hmm. I do this because I firmly believe that people still can learn about this stuff and still make informed decisions. And that decision might not be to get vaccinated. It might not be to wear masks, but at least that person will walk away with the right information, even if they make a completely different decision than the one I make. I am really interested in education. I think people have to be educated, because if people are properly educated, you would know that the mark of the beast can never be a vaccine, right? And what it says is that as a church, our seminaries have failed our pastors, because this stuff is not just coming from lay people and church members. It is coming from pastors who are put over the flock, who are going and telling people that the vaccines and vaccine mandates and stuff are mark of the beast, or it's an indication or a suggestion of end times and all this stuff. Our seminaries and our training have failed our pastors, if that is the message that they're going out there with. We as a leadership, as a local elder, as pastors, we have failed our members if our members are thinking that the vaccine is the mark of the beast. Yeah. Because it says that we have failed to properly convey what these prophecies actually mean. We have used these buzzwords of mark of the beast and Sunday law and this and that, and we have used them in crusades, and we've sensationalized them, and we have gone ahead and we have ostracized different groupings of people, but we haven't fully taught the doctrines in the way that people can understand them. And that's why people leave with this type of misinformation.
And Dr. Webley, that's a very good point you make, because we know that the vaccination cannot be the mark of the beast, because the mark of the beast is not so much, it's not a literal mark. It's a system of embracing a certain philosophy here. So, and at the health ministry of the Adventist Church there, from the North American division, they refute that posture. It cannot be. It does not make sense. You know what I'm saying? So it's just that people, they become very fanatical and they're very stubborn and they're just running with some loose goose egg approach. And I think you made a great point here. But Dr. Webley, as we're getting ready to land here, what is your opinion on complications from the booster? Someone writes, I know of someone hospitalized with movement in an arm, leg after taking the booster. What could lead to such difficulty?
Yeah. What you get with a booster is a literal revving up of your immune engine, so to speak. That's essentially what is happening. When I got my booster, I ended up being sick for a whole day. I had shivers and fever. It was one of those warmer days, and I still felt cold. I had a sweater on because and this doesn't happen to everybody. I have lots of people who have gotten the booster and nothing happened to them. So it is not out of the question that somebody could get boosted and have an immune reaction, but all of these immune reactions should be temporal. These are things that will go away in a day, in 24 hours. It should be gone because that's the way the immune system works. For people who have unusual reactions, I just don't know. I mean, we're so different as people, even though we're so similar, right? There could be some underlying thing that caused somebody to have some nervous issues as their immune system ramped up. It's like, for example, if you take a new engine and you put it in an old chassis and you rev that engine, sometimes even the bolts that's holding, you put in a V8 engine, 500, 600 horsepower in a weak chassis, and it will literally make those bolts fall out when you rev that engine. And sometimes that happens. And I think it's one of the things that researchers will have to go back and look at. Who are these individuals who are having unusual reactions to a booster, to a vaccine? What can we learn from them to say in the future, this is a grouping of individuals that should get a smaller dose, for example, as a booster and ramp up over time rather than giving them the same dose. These are unknowables in any large scale medication round that you're going to do. And so I haven't heard of individuals having that, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are individuals who got a booster and had some type of reaction that, made them feel bad for a day, because I did.
Just thank you, Dr. Webley. Just yesterday in the news, the Supreme Court rejects religious challenge to New York's vaccine mandate for healthcare workers. How did the Supreme Court get involved in this thing? They rejected New York's vaccine mandate for healthcare. So they're saying, hey, New York City can require mandate. Is that what they're saying?
That's exactly right. I saw that when it came out, because what happened is that the New York City mandated that healthcare workers get vaccinated, and that all public workers, firefighters, police, safety workers, that they get vaccinated. That was challenged in the courts. And that challenge was knocked down in the lower courts. It got appealed and went up to the Supreme Court. And the people are using religious exemption, personal exemptions, and stuff that they want to be observed. They want to use conscientious objections to not getting the vaccine. The Supreme Court at the circuit level has said, no, you can't have a religious objection to vaccines. Why? And I've been saying this to my Seventh-day Adventist colleagues over and over and over again. There is no organized religious group,
correct,
that has an objection to vaccination.
Correct.
So when you go to your pastor and you ask your pastor to write a letter saying that you don't have to get vaccinated, you're putting your pastor in a very tight spot, because your pastor can't use Seventh-day Adventist Church letterhead to write you such a letter. Why? Because the Seventh-day Adventist Church as an organization has never had an objection to vaccine. Neither does the Catholic Church. Neither does any church organization, right? You have people within these organizations because, again, as you said, the church doesn't mandate that people get vaccine. The church says, use your conscience, right? It's an individual choice. So there are always going to be people who individually choose not to get vaccinated, but you can't get the endorsement of the church to say that you shouldn't get vaccinated. That's your personal choice.
And Dr. Webley, it's not a pillar, it's not a fundamental belief that for you to be a Seventh-day Adventist, so therefore it's quite interesting. As we wind down, Dr. Webley, Omicron is here. Should we be fearful? How do we move ahead? Because just today we've heard about Columbia University, about 900 students, have to leave the campus. The numbers are going up here in New York. What do we do now? We're coming into the winter months. Omicron is here. How do we keep ourselves together?
Yeah, it is very clear that this is a more contagious variant. What is not clear yet is if it's a more severe or deadly variant. But I've said to people repeatedly, it doesn't matter if it's a more severe variant. It doesn't have to be more severe. The original variant out of Wuhan killed hundreds of thousands of people before we ever had one of these variants. So the fact that you have this variant that might not be as deadly as Delta, for example, doesn't mean it can't cause problems. Here's the part that people haven't thought about. The fact that it's a more transmittable variant means that more people are going to get it. In fact, at the rate that we're seeing here, unless we find a good way to mitigate, we could end up having 400,000 or 500,000 people a day in the United States getting infected in the middle of January, February, if something is not done. Now, think about that. Even if the vast majority of those people do not end up getting severe illnesses, you will absolutely have an overrun of your hospital systems with people who have to go to the hospital, because we're seeing that now. We're seeing people getting Omicron and have to end up in the hospital because they're sick. Now, I want you to think about that for a minute, where your hospital wards, emergency rooms are filled with COVID patients. What happens if you slip and fall on the snow at your house as you're clearing your car? What happens when your mom or your dad or your uncle gets a heart attack? What happens when you didn't take your insulin on time and you go into diabetic shock? What happens to the person in a car accident who can't get blood transfusion because all of it is used up on COVID patients? You see, this is the issue. You could have lots of people dying as a result of COVID, even though they never got infected with COVID. You see? And so this is the part of it that I mentioned before. Are you really your brother's keeper? Because what we know now is that the people who are unvaccinated are the people who are getting hammered by Omicron. Same as with Delta. These are the people who most often end up in the hospital and end up there staying there for a longer time period. So these individuals are occupying these hospital beds. They're occupying the resources. A data set came out today that showed that it costs hospitals anywhere from $50,000 to $300 and something thousand to treat a COVID patient, right? This is not simple or simplistic resources. So I'm not fearful of Omicron, because my take on it is, do what you've always been doing. If you've been taking the precautions, if you've been wearing masks, if you've been washing your hands, if you've been thoughtful about where you're congregating. I had a small gathering of the students who work in my research lab at my house last week. I had all of them get COVID tests within 24 hours of coming over. They're all vaccinated. Those who were vaccinated early enough were all boosted. But I had them get a COVID test before they could come to our house and have dinner. This is the way we're going to operate as a family. That we have a circle of people who we are constantly in contact with. That's our cohort. Anybody else outside of that cohort, it's very unlikely that we're going to associate with you until we have substantially lower numbers in the community. And that's the other thing. Your community might have a high number of COVID. You have to look out for that. You have to see what is going on around you. The higher the numbers, the greater the probability that you get infected, even if you're vaccinated. Because of course, vaccines don't prevent you from getting infected. What they do is that they lower your risk of hospitalization and death from the disease. That's the way all vaccines work. So I would say, instead of being fearful, be proactive. Go ahead, make sure you're masking, make sure you're staying away from crowded areas, stay outside as much as possible. It's harder in the winter time, but do what you can to keep yourself safe and to keep the people who cannot get vaccinated safe. There are people who cannot get vaccinated, and there are people who are vaccinated. However, they will never get the full effect of the vaccine because they have underlying conditions. People with heart disease and diabetes and lupus or other autoimmune diseases, people who have gotten, who have had cancer and recovered from it, people who have gotten an organ transplant, they will never get the full effect. So you're about 90-something percent protection. They'll never reach 90-something percent, even after they've gotten all 3 doses, because their immune system has been affected. Those individuals, if they get infected, like Colin Powell did, they have very little chance against these viruses because their immune system is not up to scratch. The question you have to ask yourself, and that I have to ask myself, is, am I really my brother's keeper? Is that just something we say, or are we really going to do it? Are you going to wear your mask when you're supposed to? Or are you going to expose somebody to getting infected? Are you going to wash your hands? Are you going to do what is necessary? Are you going to get vaccinated if you can? Are you going to seek out the information if you're fearful? Are you going to personally seek out information to understand the underpinnings of these vaccines and the vaccination so that you can be truly informed? Or are you going to act on that fear and continue to reject, and not only that, help to spread the misinformation that is causing so many people to not get vaccinated? I have watched with my own eyes and heard with my own ears Seventh-day Adventists who people trust going out there and spreading misinformation and lies, total lies about these vaccines, how these vaccines are killing tens of thousands of people every day, and how the people who are getting vaccines would have died in 6 months. And then when people didn't die in 6 months, they pushed it back to a year. And now that a year has wrapped around, I heard some of them pushing it to a year and a half. These are Seventh-day Adventists, so-called. We have to be thoughtful. We have to stop breaking the 9th commandment while trying to say we're upholding the 4th. We have to be careful and thoughtful about what we do, because what we do and say literally affect people's lives.
Thank you very much, Dr. Webley, for being with us tonight on this special worship interaction on global threat. You have been a strong advocate for truth. We appreciate the work that you are doing. Whenever the church calls you, you're always ready to serve. We want to applaud you, friends, tonight. Dr. Wilmore Webley, the Associate Dean for Inclusion and Engagement in the Graduate School, University of Massachusetts, world-renowned. His work is phenomenal, peer review. If you get a chance, just check him out there on the website, there on the internet. There, just put his name in there. You'll see his work on chlamydia, on AIDS. He's well respected as a doctor. Thank you, Dr. Webley. Can we please just drop there in the chat room there? Let's affirm Dr. Webley tonight, friends. On this Wednesday night, he came to be with us to bring us up to date with this global threat. Let's just affirm Dr. Webley for his time, his ministry. We love you, and a very happy holiday season to you, Dr. Webley. Thanks for being here tonight. Let's affirm Dr. Wilmore Webley tonight, everybody, right there in the chat room. Let's appreciate him, his work, his mind. He's a great mind. It's good to have a Seventh-day Adventist sitting in the seat of academic circle, influencing and using the science, the Bible, the spirit of prophecy, just to inspire people to know Christ. Thank you, Dr. Webley.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chalet. It's always a pleasure. I love your church, and hopefully at some point this virus will be over and we can get together at your church and have some good conversations face to face.
Looking forward to that day. Thank you, Doc, very much.
You.
Just want to remind our viewers, this Sabbath will be our final communion for the year 2021. We start our service for 11 a.m. this Sabbath, and we ask you to join us and fellowship on Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube there for this final communion for the year 2021. If you are in need of your emblem, I do ask you to please reach out to Elder Frazier and all of your elders and pick up those emblems. We come to the table at peace with God, at peace with one another, and just doing the will of the Lord. Also want to remind you that on this Sunday is the funeral service for one of our beloved pastor, Pastor Willis Reed. He shepherded many churches in the Northeastern Conference for over 40 years. But during those years, he shepherded the Shiloh church. The church was vibrant in fellowship, vibrant in worship, vibrant in community outreach. And our hearts goes out to the entire family. That service will be live there at the Linden Church. There'll be a link that you can get. We'll share that link with you for you to be able to work along and to experience that worship. We want to thank Elder Owen George and Sister Desire. They have been very instrumental in working with Pastor Reed and, the family. We want to thank Elder George and Sister Desire. They have been really a blessing to really help the late Dr. Reed and really putting everything together. So we just want to affirm them, and we're praying for the entire family. We've got good news for you that on January 1st, we start in-person church at the Hanson Place School there and Brooklyn, New York, there at the Hanson Place School there. All the church, all the buses, all the trains run right there. And we'll share more information with you. We're looking forward to coming together in-person service worship. We're going to ask you to please, in light of CDC compliance, that you will wear your mask. Our health team is putting together a package for you to follow. You'll have the option to be able to contact ahead of time to fill out the form, so that way when you get to the door, you're going to follow the protocols, because it's all about safety in this season. We'll do first Sabbath and third Sabbath to pull together and fellowship and worship. I'm looking forward to seeing you. And tomorrow at 8:30, the logistic team will meet with us as we get ready for in-person service there. So please invite your friends, invite your family, and let's see how the Lord bless. On January 15th will be a town hall meeting for the Shiloh Church. Town hall meeting. We'll have our worship, and afterward we'll have a few, little water there, and then we'll have a town hall meeting. And that town hall meeting, what will you expect? You'll hear from your elected officers what they envision for the year 2022. And you want to come, and we want to hear you and sit down with you and just hear what you have to say. We'll share with you our short-term goals, our long-term goals, and how collectively we work together to accomplish the work of ministry. So on January 15th, please plan to be with us for a town hall meeting, and we are excited. As we get ready to log off here shortly here on this Monday, I happened to reach out to one of our young people, and they were so excited to hear from me. And I said the last time we talked a few years ago, I know that you were just getting ready to go to college, and you were just about 16 or turning 17, like Pastor, I am now 19. And I heard that bass in that voice. And I said, listen, do you have a beard on your face there? Pastor, the mustache, the beard is fully there. And as we had that conversation, I was so energized by this young person. It's like, Pastor, it's so good to hear from you. So good that we can talk together, we can pray. And we were just talking about how was life through the pandemic? How you doing? How you living? How is college? How is spiritual life? And after that, we had a good word of prayer. So we are starting what's called Operation Youth Recall, because our young people, they are our greatest treasures. We have our team, Sister Lockhart, our illustrious youth leader, Elder Humphrey, the marvelous overseeing elder, Elder Frazier, our superb head elder, and all of our board members who are fully committed working. We are reaching to our young people, because as we get into 2022, we really want to use in the word body building. We want to build the body. We want to build the body, build the body, right? Connecting, coming together, and being safe. Even though we're in this COVID situation, we can still call each other during the week and come together. So I'm excited. Please reach out to your young people and let them know that we love them, we're here for them, and that young adults, young people, the church is standing with them, and we are fully in our campaign for youth recall. Please keep praying for our young people. We are excited for what the Lord is doing. For many of you all in this Christmas season here, you know that the Toy for Tot operation is fully in drive. We have not moved this year at Shiloh with our Toy for Tot operation, but there are many vendors who has reached out to us, and they have said to us, Pastor, we can get some toys for our children. So by all means necessary, we will see how we could try to pull together and make sure our babies, our little ones, are able to get a little toy. So if anybody wants to make a contribution for Toy for Tot for Shiloh, let's see what we can do, because the little ones, they like a little something from time to time. So please help us along the way. There are many vendors willing to give us some contribution, and Shiloh has always been good. It's not too late to let that little boy, that little girl know that Jesus loves them, and here's a gift for them. So please be mindful in this season. I love you, but more importantly, God loves you. Thanks for being with us on this global threat situation. Move with faith and not fear, and keep doing what you're doing. Social distancing, wearing your mask, washing your hands. If you choose to be vaccinated, that's your choice. But let's be responsible. We can never move toward herd immunity until all of us are responsible. And like Dr. Webley said, we are our brother's keeper. And the best way to preach the gospel is not to talk it, but to live it. Let's live it. Let's be our brother's keeper. The Lord bless you and keep you, and makes his face to shine upon you, and grant you his peace until we meet again. No service tomorrow morning or evening. I'll see you on Friday as we prepare for Holy Communion. God bless you. We thank you. We love you. We have just logged off to